The curly-haired girl stares blankly into the cold distance. Sitting alone in the snow, the curly-haired girl gazes at the desolate winter forest. Looking up with tear-filled eyes, the curly-haired girl looks utterly helpless. With a pained groan, the curly-haired girl struggles to lift herself from the frozen ground. Exhausted and weak, the curly-haired girl collapses face down onto the cold snow. Feeling a sudden presence, the curly-haired girl quickly raises her head in alarm. Startled by a voice praising her sharp gaze, the curly-haired girl looks up. A mysterious red-eyed nobleman in an ornate hooded coat looms over the shivering girl. Recognizing the red-eyed nobleman, the curly-haired girl gasps in disbelief. Looking up at her savior, the curly-haired girl asks why he decided to help her. Gently cupping her face, the red-eyed nobleman reveals he has a favor to ask. A dark proposal echoes as he asks for her help in murdering the emperor. The red-eyed nobleman stands tall over the bloodied and barefoot curly-haired girl in the snow. Smiling with quiet confidence, the red-eyed nobleman awaits her response. The curly-haired girl stares back at him, stunned by the gravity of his request. The curly-haired girl peacefully rests her eyes, surrounded by soft yellow flowers. Ornate golden chandeliers cast a warm, brilliant glow over a grand hall. A beautiful blonde girl quietly stands with her eyes closed, waiting. The elegant hem of her blue gown is adorned with intricate rose details. Bids rapidly climb inside the bustling, gold-adorned auction house. A lively auctioneer announces the successful sale of a Western girl to the crowd. Overlooking the auction hall, a wealthy patron approves of the high bid. The auction owner, Hilarion, greedily notes that human trafficking is far more profitable than murder. Hilarion carefully inspects his paperwork, looking suspicious. Sitting amidst purple roses, the red-eyed nobleman watches the stage while wearing a white masquerade mask. The red-eyed nobleman calmly observes the auction, hiding his true identity behind his mask. A sudden thunderous uproar from the crowd startles Hilarion. Blinding golden sparkle fills the stage, capturing everyone's attention. Handcuffed and composed, the blonde girl in her elaborate blue gown is presented on stage. Opening her bright blue eyes, the blonde girl captivates the audience with her stunning beauty. Bids instantly skyrocket to astronomical amounts, leaving Hilarion completely shocked. The entire auction house is left in awe by the blonde girl's breathtaking appearance. Fearing the chaos, Hilarion desperately yells for the frantic bidders to wait. Slapping his hand on his papers, Hilarion tries to regain control of his senses. Realizing the danger of selling an unregistered captive, Hilarion decides to halt the sale. Forcing a bright smile, Hilarion steps in front of the blonde girl to address the crowd. Hilarion announces that the blonde girl will instead be featured in the next auction. Smiling nervously, Hilarion tries to appease the disgruntled crowd. Looking at her, Hilarion is reminded of another woman, sparking his own twisted desires. A sudden authoritative tap sounds as a bid of 100,000 gold is placed. The red-eyed nobleman smiles smugly, completely unfazed by the astronomical sum. Believing it to be a joke, Hilarion laughs off the absurdly high bid. The red-eyed nobleman reiterates his massive bid and offers to purchase the entire establishment. Hilarion's sweat drops, wondering if the wealthy nobleman has lost his mind over a mere toy. Sensing the shift in the room, the blonde girl's head twitches. Confused, Hilarion murmurs in surprise at an unexpected presence. Golden lightning suddenly crackles around the blonde girl, terrifying Hilarion. Unleashing a surge of power, the blonde girl smiles serenely as electricity dances around her. Recognizing her devastating power, Hilarion screams in sheer terror as his world shatters. The terrified guards scatter in panic as the blonde girl unleashes her overwhelming aura. The blonde girl swings her sword as golden lightning crackles, effortlessly overpowering the action guards. Pivoting swiftly on her high heels, she moves with lethal grace and absolute control. Panic erupts as the blonde girl unleashes golden lightning, leaving the guards completely helpless and screaming in agony. Wielding her sword with blood-stained hands, the blonde girl stares ahead with chilling determination. Cowering on the floor, a terrified Hilarion desperately demands to know the identity of his powerful attacker. With a sudden tight grip, she forcefully clutches his collar to prevent him from escaping. Easily lifting Hilarion by his neck, the blonde girl stares at him coldly as he chokes. Looking down on him, she asks Hilarion if he truly fails to recognize who she is. Terrified and struggling, Hilarion mentally wonders if she could be the only person who possessed such devastating power. Realization strikes like lightning as Hilarion gasps, asking in complete disbelief if she is actually Charlotte. Smirking coldly, the blonde girl confirms her identity as the phantom of the curly-haired Charlotte looms behind her. Hilarion is paralyzed with fear, remembering that the notorious villainous Charlotte supposedly died in prison years ago. He recalls the past when both he and Charlotte served as lethal assassins who eliminated enemies for the Emperor. Demolishing his hopes of mercy, Charlotte blasts Hilarion backward, declaring that it is now his turn to die. Weak and defeated on the floor, Hilarion desperately begs her to spare him for the sake of old times. Looking at her blood-stained hand, crackling with golden energy, Charlotte mockingly repeats his desperate plea for mercy. Unleashing her power, Charlotte scoffs at the absurd notion of a villainess possessing any virtues or mercy. Hearing a sudden mocking round of applause from behind, Charlotte turns her head toward the window in surprise. The red-eyed nobleman, Ruslan, steps into the room while clapping, playfully calling out her alias. With a serious expression, Charlotte tells him that a minor victory like this is far from enough. She stares down at her bloodied sword, swearing to keep fighting until every true traitor is eliminated. Exhausted from fighting in her new body, Charlotte collapses into Ruslan's arms and tells him to carry her. Ruslan looks down at her with a gentle, knowing smile, entirely amused by her demands. Holding her close, Ruslan reminds her of his promise to thoroughly play his role as her supportive fiancé. Resting her head against his shoulder, Charlotte softly murmurs how incredibly tired she feels. Ruslan smiles softly as he carries his sleeping fiancé, pleased with her fierce display of power. Charlotte's bright blue eyes grow heavy, slowly drifting shut as she succumbs to her profound exhaustion. Softly agreeing with him, Charlotte peacefully closes her eyes, letting herself rest in a safe embrace. She vows to rest only until she finally slays the corrupt emperor and those who betrayed her. The scene shifts to the past, where a Grand Count mansion stands under a bright sunny sky. Young, curly-haired Charlotte pauses in the hallway as she overhears the household maids gossiping about her. They whisper cruel rumors about her parentage, labeling her as nothing more than an illegitimate child. Walking up the stairs, the maids mockingly criticize her status and giggle at her misfortune. One maid laughs wickedly, comparing the Count's true lady to a rose and Charlotte to a worthless crow. Hurt by their venomous words, young Charlotte stands alone in silence, her eyes filled with quiet sadness. Wandering the opulent halls, she bitterly accepts the painful truth of her birth but remains deeply hurt. She introduces herself as Charlotte Morden, the neglected illegitimate child who was treated as an outcast. To escape her harsh reality, she would swing her brother's discarded practice sword, daydreaming of fairy tales. Pouring her frustration into swordplay, young Charlotte swings her wooden blade with fierce determination in the woods. She wonders why anyone would ever bother visiting a cursed, lonely estate like hers. A sudden slip of her hand causes the wooden sword to wobble, breaking her focused concentration. As the sword falls to the grass, Charlotte looks down despondently, believing no one would ever save a crow. She is suddenly startled by a gentle, kind voice calling out to ask if she is all right. Looking up, she sees a handsome, golden-haired boy in a pristine white uniform reaching out to her. A dazzling young knight has arrived in her lonely world, offering his hand to help her up. This kind savior was Prince Albert, the seventh prince who had been pushed out of succession. Despite his royal blood, he was exiled to govern this remote, rural territory far from the capital. But to the lonely, neglected Charlotte, none of his political struggles mattered in the slightest. Inspired by his kindness, she swings her sword with newfound joy and a bright, radiant smile. As sunlight streams through the window, an authoritative voice demands to know why her sword instructor is being useless. Sitting comfortably on a plush red sofa, the kind-hearted Prince Albert sits beside Charlotte, holding an open book. Looking at her warmly, Prince Albert curiously asks if she has ever heard of the concept of auras. Charlotte is caught completely off guard, her cheeks flushing pink as she struggles to formulate a coherent response. Overwhelmed with embarrassment, Charlotte retreats into herself while Prince Albert looks on in utter confusion at her sudden shyness. Gently resting his hand on a leather-bound book, the young prince softly encourages her to speak freely with him. Prince Albert offers her a warm, serene smile, instantly putting her racing mind at absolute ease. Gazing back at him, Charlotte feels her heart skip a beat as a deep connection blossoms between them. Hand in hand, the pair joyfully stroll through the bustling town square, laughing and sharing precious, carefree moments together. Gathering around a strategic map, Prince Albert and Charlotte unite a group of talented allies to plan their future. Despite the cruel whispers of gossiping townspeople labeling them misfits, Charlotte chooses to ignore the negativity. Clasping a bright golden star to her chest, Charlotte finds pure happiness in the simple life she now leads. Lying on the cool grass under a starry night, Prince Albert opens up about his looming, inescapable royal struggles. Looking down at him with unwavering adoration, Charlotte passionately promises that she will always believe in him. Comforted by her absolute loyalty, Prince Albert looks up at her and vows to take a decisive path. In a beautiful, glowing dreamscape, Prince Albert gently helps Charlotte step out of her gilded cage toward freedom. A sharp rhythmic knocking sounds at the door, promptly answered by a calm command to enter. The maid gasps in surprise as she comes face to face with the unexpected presence of the second prince. With a sudden, brutal thrust, the second prince is violently attacked, a dark crimson spray painting the room. Operating in the dark shadows, Charlotte catches the falling prince, her hands stained with blood after delivering a fatal strike. Soaked in a blood-splattered red dress, Charlotte stands alone with her sword, fully accepting her dark new reality. Standing proudly before a grand domed palace, a regal Prince Albert prepares to claim his rightful throne. Rumors quickly spread throughout the kingdom, attributing the seventh prince's rapid ascension to his powerful financial backers. Wealthy nobles whisper among themselves, praising the exceptional military tactics and divine intervention that secured his victory. Arriving at the towering royal castle, Charlotte learns that Albert has requested an urgent private audience with her. Stepping eagerly into the grand audience chamber, Charlotte calls out to him, wondering what he needs. Keeping his back turned coldly to her, Albert addresses her by her full name, casting an immediate chill. Turning slightly, Albert acknowledges her immense contributions but laments that he must remain eternally indebted to her. Charlotte is left utterly speechless when he suddenly offers her a mere government post as compensation. Tense, tight clench of her fists betrays her rising panic as her heart begins to sink. Forcing a brave, desperate smile, Charlotte insists she needs no rewards, desiring only to stand by his side. Looking over his shoulder with chilling indifference, Albert curtly dismisses her, ordering her to leave his presence. Walking away, a deeply worried Charlotte anxiously wonders what could be bothering her beloved prince so deeply. Sudden, defensive shouting echoes through the palace as Charlotte is hit with a shocking, unexpected accusation. She fiercely protests the ridiculous claims, desperately trying to comprehend the absolute madness of the situation. Terrified and bewildered, Charlotte falls to her knees on the cold stone floor, looking up in sheer disbelief. Sitting high upon his golden throne, Albert clutches the written accusations with an unreadable, stern expression. Looking down on her coldly, Albert demands to know if she still dares to deny the charges. On her knees, a weeping Charlotte begs her former friends and allies to speak up and defend her innocence. To her horror, her closest companions turn away, completely ignoring her desperate pleas with cold, silent betrayal. A heavy, dreadful doom hangs over Charlotte as her name is spoken with final, terrifying authority. The severity of her alleged crime is read aloud, accusing her of treasonous violence against the future empress. Towering over the broken girl, Albert coldly declares he will spare her life only because of her past service. Demolishing her world, Albert sentences her to a lifetime of imprisonment, ordering her lineage to be forcefully ended. Cast away and forgotten, Charlotte's tragic story is written into the history books as a wicked, jealous villainess. Her legacy is painted with bloody daggers and thorny vines, depicting her as a ruthless, unfeeling monster. Surrounded by falling blood-stained rose petals, Charlotte bitterly laments that this cruel fate was never what she wanted. Bound tightly by thick ropes, her freedom is stripped away, leaving her utterly helpless. She realizes with crushing grief that the very friends she trusted most were the ones who bound her. Even as her brutal punishment was read aloud, her so-called companions stood by, actively validating her downfall. A devastating blow lands as they ruthlessly shatter her knee, ignoring her desperate, agonizing cries for mercy. With a sudden whir of the cold wind, a snow-covered carriage travels through the frozen wilderness. She desperately pleaded her innocence, insisting that the accusations of treason were nothing more than a misunderstanding. Tossed down into the dark abyss of her prison cell, she stubbornly clung to a fragile hope of salvation. She hoped her companions would return to restore her ruined reputation, unable to accept their absolute betrayal. Locked behind heavy iron bars, her hands are bound in cold shackles as she stares into the bleak light. Yet no fairy tale savior arrived to rescue her from the harsh reality of her confinement. Her dreams of a peaceful future shatter, fading away into a soft, distant memory. Like a helpless crow locked within a gilded cage, her life slowly withered away in captivity. Deep inside the cavernous dungeon, a guard's voice echoes, questioning if such extreme cruelty is truly necessary. Carrying a lantern, the senior guard dismissively replies that they are merely playing a small trick with her food. They left her moldy bread poisoned with a deadly spider, branding her a villainess who deserves no mercy. Refusing to succumb to despair, a dirt-stained hand firmly grabs the tainted bread from the cold floor. The senior guard harshly scolds his companion for failing to understand the Emperor's unspoken desire. Eating the poisoned bread to survive, Charlotte realizes the Emperor intends for her to perish silently in this cell. She bitterly understands that she is simply too dangerous to be left alive. Her immense power is a threat, a weapon the Emperor no longer needs in his peaceful reign. Emperor Albert views his former ally as a dangerous tool to be discarded, erasing any trace of her from his throne. Realizing his murderous intent, Charlotte clutches her chains as the grim reality of her sentence sinks in. Her spirit remains unbroken as she reaches out, determined to find a way out of this frozen hell. With a fierce, deadly glare, she vows to escape and slaughter every traitor who brought about her ruin. This frozen nightmare is located in a deep northern cave where prisoners are buried alive beneath the snow. Shivering violently, she laments that the walls are completely frozen over and heavily guarded at all times. She looks down in dismay at her shattered frozen legs, completely unable to move them. Closing her eyes in concentration, she attempts to gather her strength and manifest her powerful aura once more. Her greatest obstacle is that her aura has been completely blocked from circulating through her broken body. She calculates that borrowing someone else's aura might grant her enough temporary strength to move her legs. Yet she knows that obtaining another's aura in this isolated, forgotten prison is nearly impossible. Suddenly, a guard bows deeply in respect as an unexpected aristocratic visitor enters the freezing dungeon. Walking with slow, deliberate steps, the mysterious guest asks if the guards have heard of Lord Lick's passing. Hearing a deep, unfamiliar voice, Charlotte listens intently to the heavy footsteps echoing through the cavern. Red-eyed nobleman Ruslan remarks that people are uneasy due to a villainess assassinating the imperial family. The guard quickly reassures Duke Keidel that Charlotte is harmless, mockingly calling her a helpless cripple. Stunned by his imposing presence, Charlotte looks up as Ruslan towers directly over her in her cell. Gazing down at her, Ruslan calmly asks if she is indeed Charlotte Morden. He notes that her fierce eyes look remarkably lively for someone who has been imprisoned for so long. As the guard watches in nervous silence, Ruslan leans down closer to the bound and helpless girl. With a sudden movement, Ruslan pulls Charlotte close and kisses her deeply, igniting a brilliant glow of shared energy. As he pulls back from the unexpected kiss, Charlotte is left completely stunned and speechless. Flashing a teasing smirk, Ruslan casually remarks that there was nothing of interest there. Flushed with fury, Charlotte fiercely curses him for his audacious and disrespectful behavior. While Ruslan mockingly questions her insults, the panicking guard warns him that kissing the prisoner is highly problematic. Hearing the guard's panic, Charlotte is stunned to learn that this mysterious man is the Grand Duchess's son. She recalls hearing rumors of the Grand Duchess of Licht's recent death in the Köln-Dorf. Grand Dukedom of Licht is a powerful historic northern house possessing direct imperial lineage. She tries to make sense of his identity, remembering only a daughter and no mention of his son. Suddenly, Charlotte gasps in astonishment as a strange, warm sensation begins to tingle in her fingertips. She realizes with shock that a powerful foreign aura is now flowing faintly through her veins. Outside her cell, a guard suddenly calls out for the warden, breaking her train of thought. The guards bicker as they carry a bucket of ice water, intending to humiliate Charlotte under the guise of bathing. Squeezing her hands into tight fists, Charlotte channels the newly acquired aura to shatter her restraints once and for all. Standing tall, Charlotte shatters her binds, shocking the guards as a brilliant light erupts around her. Turning with a calm smile, Charlotte greets the terrified guards amidst a shower of glowing magical particles. A dark blue screen of energy crackles, reflecting her long-awaited moment of freedom and escape. Concentrating on the warm energy, Charlotte realizes that the mysterious man's shared aura is a crucial lifeline. Stepping over the unconscious guards, Charlotte leaves her frozen prison behind without a single trace of regret. Desperately climbing out of the icy cave, Charlotte pushes forward, knowing her borrowed strength won't last long. A sharp gasp escapes her lips as she finally emerges into the blinding, freezing light of the outside world. The blinding white of a fierce northern blizzard greets her, obscuring everything in a freezing blur of snow. Shivering violently in her thin clothes, Charlotte groans in pain, her body failing her in the freezing cold. Collapsing into the snow, Charlotte crawls forward with sheer determination, refusing to die before obtaining her vengeance. Standing nearby, the dark-haired Ruslan watches her closely, his heart burning with his own deep-seated desire for revenge. In the middle of the freezing storm, a fierce vow of vengeance echoes through the biting winds. Leaning in, Ruslan praises Charlotte's fierce gaze, captivated by the absolute resolve burning within her eyes. Towering over the fallen girl, Ruslan stands composed in his heavy winter coat, offering an unexpected path forward. Struggling to think clearly, Charlotte recalls rumors of the late Grand Duchess of Licht's family. Memories return of the late Grand Duchess, who was known to have only one biological daughter. Smiling faintly, Ruslan confirms her thoughts, his red eyes gleaming with a quiet, knowing intelligence. Shivering in the snow, Charlotte directly demands to know why this powerful nobleman is helping her. Before she can say another word, Ruslan gently covers her mouth with his gloved hand to silence her. Drawing closer, Ruslan looks into her eyes and softly confesses that he has a crucial favor to ask. Under a dark sky, he asks if she will help him assassinate the Emperor, a sweet melody to her ears. His dark cloak fluttering in the wind, Ruslan stands ready to begin their dangerous, treasonous alliance. Traveling through the heavy snow, a magnificent blue carriage carries them toward a mysterious northern destination. Inside the carriage, Charlotte contemplates the ruined, magic-rich northern kingdom of Athenia, destroyed by the previous emperor. Looking out the window at a distant grand castle, Charlotte learns they are heading straight to Athenia. A towering white stone castle stands majestically amidst the snow-covered pine forests of the northern mountains. Weak and unable to stand, Charlotte is gently offered support by Ruslan as they prepare to exit the carriage. Looking up at him with deep suspicion, Charlotte questions his true motives for bringing her to this castle. A magical blue light swirls as Ruslan reveals his ultimate plan to cast magic on her. Flashing a quiet smile, Ruslan looks down at her, fully prepared to reveal the secrets of Athenia. A grand, dark illustration introduces Athenia, the mysterious northern country renowned for its forbidden, powerful magic. History reveals how Athenia fell due to the greed of Emperor Georg, who sought their royal immortality magic. A quiet nest of birds sits on a castle window, symbolizing the remnants of Athenia's stolen magical heritage. Listening intently to his explanation, Charlotte tries to comprehend the connection to her own dire situation. Sweeping Charlotte up into his arms, Ruslan reassures her that the royal magic is indeed the key. Carrying her through the castle halls, Ruslan explains how the previous emperor failed to wipe out the royals. Charlotte learns that Grand Duchess Liszt rescued Athenia's last surviving royal child from certain death. Shocked by the revelation, Charlotte listens as Ruslan explains that the late Grand Duchess was likely assassinated. Holding her close, Ruslan explains that the Grand Duchess faced immense pressure from the emperor before her death. As Charlotte stumbles, Ruslan catches her, mentioning that his young sister is still too weak to rule. Charlotte's eyes widen as the sheer scale of the political conspiracy and tragedy finally sinks in. Looking down at her with a solemn expression, Ruslan prepares to show her the final piece of the puzzle. A bright, swirling aura promises a fresh start, hinting at a powerful magic that will allow her rebirth. Standing beside Ruslan, a stunned Charlotte gazes upon a white coffin resting in a grand, quiet hall. Inside the coffin, a beautiful blonde girl lies peacefully in a white dress surrounded by delicate white flowers. Leaning against Ruslan, Charlotte is overwhelmed with complex emotions as she stares at the deceased girl. Grabbing her head in utter disbelief, Charlotte fiercely protests the absolute madness of this dark proposal. Glaring at Ruslan, Charlotte demands to know if this innocent girl was used as some kind of sacrifice. Ruslan's expression turns deeply sorrowful, carrying a heavy burden of grief for his lost family. Looking at Charlotte, Ruslan quietly begins to explain the tragic truth behind the blonde girl's demise. An ornate frame displays the dark history of Emperor Garrick's death and the burial of magic and darkness. Holding Charlotte gently, the black-haired Ruslan declares that this innocent girl will not be used as a sacrifice. Charlotte stares in shock at the deceased blonde-haired girl, realizing her soul is meant for a new vessel. Gathering glowing magical energy in his hand, Ruslan prepares to formally introduce himself to the bewildered Charlotte. With a sudden brilliant flash, Ruslan's hair turns silver as he reveals his true name and royal lineage. Charlotte gasps in utter astonishment, struggling to comprehend the incredible display of ancient magic before her. Silver-haired Ruslan reveals he is the last royal successor of Athenia, igniting Charlotte's shock at his magic. Staring at the beautiful blonde girl resting in flowers, Charlotte asks what his true intentions are. Collapsing to her knees and staring at her frostbitten feet, Charlotte questions if he intends to rebuild his nation. A weary sigh escapes Charlotte's lips as she processes the sheer gravity of this dangerous, forbidden proposal. Beneath a grand window, Ruslan explains they are running out of time, driven by more than just national ruin. Ruslan vows to avenge the Grand Duchess who saved his mother, recalling her shadow from his childhood. The blonde girl lies perfectly still in her coffin, a quiet monument to a tragic, stolen life. Staring at Charlotte, Ruslan acknowledges the occult nature of the magic but asks if she still desires her revenge. He leaves the decision to her, reminding her that the choice of which path to walk is hers alone. A deep, oppressive violet energy fractures, representing the life-altering choice that now lies before Charlotte. Placing his hands on Charlotte's shoulders, Ruslan calls her name, grounding her in this pivotal moment. Looking up at the towering spires of the castle, Charlotte fiercely accepts the dangerous contract. Clenching her hand into a tight fist, Charlotte remembers her betrayer, Albert, and his treacherous inner circle. She reflects on the years of absolute dedication she wasted on those who ultimately cast her aside to die. Memories of her betrayal and hanging upside down in heavy iron chains fuel her absolute hatred. With a fierce, terrifying glare, Charlotte vows to strip away the lives of everyone who ruined her. Kneeling within a glowing magic circle, Ruslan praises Charlotte's strong willpower and prepares to begin the ritual. As the magical patterns glow with intense blue light, Charlotte asks if failure means her immediate death. Looking down at her with calm intensity, Ruslan reassures her, promising to put his own life on the line. Leaning close, Ruslan instructs Charlotte to close her eyes, promising that the ritual will be over when she wakes. Tight squeeze of his hand anchors their resolve as the forbidden magic activates. They share a deep, glowing kiss, sealing their dangerous alliance as brilliant magical particles swirl around them. A sudden surge of energy churns within her, and Charlotte's eyes fly open in complete shock. Clasping her head in pain, Charlotte is overwhelmed as another person's memories flood violently into her mind. Looking around the warm, sunlit room, Charlotte stands confused by her unfamiliar surroundings. In a vivid memory, Charlotte watches a blonde maid plead with the young black-haired Ruslan at his desk. The young black-haired Ruslan buries his face in his gloved hands, overwhelmed by grief and despair. Charlotte watches the blonde maid speak, realizing these memories belong to the girl who lay in the coffin. The blonde girl looks away, expressing her deep, painful resentment toward her own face and body. Charlotte stands in silent reflection, absorbing the tragic past of the girl whose body she now inhabits. The scene transitions to the grand, sunlit exterior of a magnificent white imperial estate. Waking up in a bed of pink roses, the blonde-haired girl groans softly in pain as she stirs. Looking around in confusion, she wonders where she is as she takes in her brand new surroundings. She looks at the luxurious room and the green couch, realizing she has never seen this place before. Examining her pale, delicate hand, she realizes that she is no longer in her original body. Looking at the lace curtains, she realizes she is in the Licht Grand Dukedom, inside Count Keitel's bedroom. Staring down solemnly, the blonde-haired girl processes her successful rebirth into this delicate new form. Sitting up in bed, Charlotte inspects her new, slender fingers, amazed that she can finally move. Turning her head, Charlotte listens as a voice praises her intuitive and natural mastery of aura. The black-haired Ruslan explains that her powerful soul pushed out the poison, leaving her body perfectly healed. Flashing a teasing smile, Charlotte remarks that his kisses were terrible, but agrees that their shared goals unite them. Stretching her arms playfully, Charlotte asks if she should address him as her lord now that she is a maid. With a soft rustle, her bare feet touch the floor as she prepares to take her first steps. Looking forward, she directly asks what their next plans are to bring about their ultimate revenge. The blonde-haired Charlotte stands in her white nightgown, adjusting to her new physical form with lingering disbelief. Surrounded by a flurry of pink roses, the red-eyed Ruslan suddenly proposes that they fake a romantic relationship. Charlotte stands frozen in surprise as Ruslan calmly explains his strategy for keeping them close. He argues that pretending to be lovers is the most natural cover story for their secret alliance. Charlotte reacts with deep skepticism, highly doubtful of his sudden and convenient romantic scheme. Ruslan is left momentarily bewildered when she questions his age and apparent lack of experience. Charlotte recalls that Athenia fell 22 years ago, matching the timeline of his birth. Though his age aligns perfectly with the kingdom's fall, Charlotte remains suspicious of his true nature. With a smug smirk, she teasingly calls him out on his obvious romantic inexperience. Flattered and defensive, Ruslan demands to know if his lack of experience is a problem. Smoothly shifting her tone, Charlotte agrees that their fake relationship is indeed the most efficient strategy. She directly confirms if he is proposing, they become official contract lovers. His firm agreement seals their secret arrangement as sunlight floods the grand bedroom. A sudden sharp crash echoes as a porcelain teacup shatters on the floor. In Juju's memories, she loyally drinks poison to protect her master, the Grand Duchess. They conjure a cover story of falling in love while he cared for her during her critical illness. Accepting the fictional tale, Charlotte agrees to play her part in this elaborate romantic script. Charlotte questions if this intimate performance is how they will formally validate their dangerous contract. His shoes step decisively closer as he declares their partnership officially in motion. Leaning down close to her, Ruslan prepares to make their false intimacy look completely believable. A sudden shout breaks the tension as she pushes him back and addresses him directly. Annoyed by his forwardness, Charlotte aggressively grabs his tie and demands to know what he is doing. Ruslan stares down in utter confusion, completely unaware of what he did wrong. She sighs at his sheer innocence, pointing out how terrible he is at playing his role. She points toward the bed, lecturing him on how a real couple would behave in such a setting. Suddenly, she is caught off by his unexpected proximity, her eyes widening in surprise. Smirking with sudden confidence, Ruslan notes that they need to leave convincing evidence of their passion. He pulls her into a tight, breathless embrace, sealing their deceptive alliance with simulated passion. A cheerful voice from outside suddenly congratulates Charlotte on her full recovery. The maid Linde combs Charlotte's long blonde hair, celebrating her remarkable recovery from the poison. Gazing quietly into her reflection, Charlotte struggles to recognize the delicate foreign face staring back. She notes that Juju also endured a life filled with pain and hardship. A tragic past reveals Juju was orphaned early on by a ruthless plague in the south. Forced into servitude, Juju suffered threats from a greedy noble who targeted her beauty. She remembers that 3 years have passed since the compassionate Grand Duchess saved Juju. She reflects on how Juju remained resilient and kind despite her many hardships. With a sudden wince, Charlotte cries out in pain as the hairbrush violently snags her hair. Linde quickly apologizes, claiming she only exerted extra effort on the Count's orders. Sweating nervously, Linde tries to blame the comb for the painful mishap. Charlotte realizes Linda was deeply jealous of Juju and bullied her constantly in the past. Flashing a deceptively sweet smile, Charlotte reassures the nervous maid. With terrifying ease, Charlotte's hands effortlessly snap the solid hairbrush handle in two. Linda's face turns pale with horror as she realizes the snapped handle was made of solid metal. Terrified, Linda demands to know if Charlotte is using her inhuman strength to threaten her. Charlotte slides her nightgown off her shoulder, preparing to reveal her physical evidence. Linda gasps in pure shock, completely stunned by the implication of what she sees. Charlotte spins a wild tale of how she had to intimately comfort the Count. In reality, she privately fumes over the fact that Ruslan's kiss left no mark. Leaving the lie, a terrified Linde drops to her knees and begs Charlotte for forgiveness. Glancing back with icy satisfaction, Charlotte firmly asserts her dominant new status in the household. The newly hired maid eagerly promises to do her best while brushing Charlotte's long blonde hair. Staring into space, Charlotte remains deeply lost in her thoughts as she plots her next moves. A framed portrait displays Greek figures with hidden faces, representing the family's shrouded history. In his quiet study, Ruslan diligently reviews stacks of documents at his desk. Seaman startles Ruslan by placing a cup of hot tea onto his desk. Butler Seaman expresses relief at his young master's safe return at dawn. Ruslan warmly thanks Seaman for the tea, playfully questioning his continued young master title. A drafted letter falsely announces that Charlotte Morden died during a prison escape. Ruslan instructs that the letter's delivery to the imperial capital be delayed. Seaman asks if there are any suspicious signs from the rumored villainess. Taking a sip of tea, Ruslan defends Charlotte, stating she should not be called a villainess. In a flashback, Ruslan, disguised in a top hat, investigates Charlotte's past among the commoners. The public rumors had branded her a cruel villainess obsessed with greed and murder. Despite her dark reputation, the truth of Charlotte's past was far more complicated. Charlotte's original form stands surrounded by thorny roses, holding a sword in silent determination. Ruslan realizes her fierce actions were born of profound loyalty rather than malice. Seaman interrupts his thoughts to bring up a strange rumor he has recently heard. Intrigued, Ruslan asks Seaman to clarify what rumors he is referring to. Ruslan is pleasantly surprised to hear the news arrived quicker than he anticipated. Seaman explains he thoroughly vetted the manipulative maid Linde before assigning her to Charlotte. Linde's wicked, desperate nature is revealed, showing she is someone who drags others down with her. Charlotte intends to use Linde's gossiping nature to spread calculated rumors throughout the estate. A slow, deliberate step of a ruffled dress signals an elegant approach. A sharp knock at the study door interrupts Ruslan's conversation with Simon. The door slowly creaks open, revealing a glimpse of a lavish laced gown. A confident voice announces that Linde was utilized perfectly for their scheme. Charlotte stands in a stunning blue gown decorated with red ribbons, fully embodying her high status. Two maids whisper in the grand corridor, gossiping about Charlotte's sudden dramatic transformation. Linda nervously tells another maid that Charlotte behaves like a completely different person since surviving the poison. In a sad memory, a sickly, dark-haired girl is shown coughing weakly. The girl reflects on how her noble birthright and loyal maid were stolen by an adopted brother. Looking incredibly frail, the young noblewoman sits in her bed, clutching her chest in pain. A massive stone cross stands cold and silent under the falling winter snow. Simon recalls his first fateful meeting with Ruslan's mother years ago. A young red-eyed Ruslan stands alone amidst the bitter winter snowfall. A beautiful, dark-haired woman named Valentina stands elegantly in the cold snow. Young Ruslan listens intently as his mother is brought up in Simon's memories. Simon recalls Valentina wondering why Charlotte spared her life during their encounter. Young Ruslan stands alongside his mother as they look out at the snow-covered graves. A snow-capped grave adorned with white flowers marks a tragic loss in the past. Flashback shows Valentina dragging her pregnant body through the snow to save the Queen of Athenia. Simon reflects on the complex moral reasons behind their secret alliance. Standing before the grave, Valentina remarks that the Queen's burning resolve to survive was beautiful. Valentina playfully giggles, teasing the young, embarrassed Ruslan in the snowy field. Ruslan realizes his inheritance of Count Keitel's lineage was made possible through his mother's secret magic. Simon notes how the tragic early passing of his brother unexpectedly aided their current plans. Simon remembers promising to protect and care for Ruslan until he grew into a man. Young Ruslan looks up with deep respect at the elegant, red-eyed Valentina. Simon notes that these arrangements were made to secure a safer future in case of tragedy. The scene shifts to the exterior of a grand white-pillared estate basking in daylight. Ruslan holds a document confirming he will consider the matter when he travels to the imperial capital. Looking on from a distance, Charlotte quietly observes that Ruslan has been busy since early morning. Leaning against the balcony railing, Charlotte calls out to Ruslan as she watches him work. Ruslan's overwhelming list of duties ranges from budget planning and inheritance rights to organizing personnel changes. Looking down thoughtfully, Charlotte reflects on how hectic the day of her own past collapse had been. Inside the quiet study, massive, chaotic towers of paperwork pile high on the desk. Dressed elegantly, Charlotte directly questions him about his plans for their upcoming future. Ruslan calmly declares their next move is to journey straight to the imperial capital. Recent disasters in the eastern region caused the farming economy to collapse, leaving countless citizens displaced and jobless. Amidst the crisis, Grand Duchess Annalise stepped forward to take charge when other leaders simply watched from the sidelines. By employing the displaced migrants to cultivate undeveloped lands, the Grand Duchess successfully revitalized the local economy. Her ambitions grew as she began leading daring explorations into the completely ruined territories of Athenia. Ruslan solemnly recalls how his adopted mother's rising reputation drew dangerous attention from their enemies. Albert's paranoia intensified due to whispers mocking his legitimacy, making him deeply wary of the Grand Duchess's influence. Albert persistently sent investigators to search for any minor bookkeeping errors to frame as severe crimes. Not long after the investigations began, the Grand Duchess went out for a fateful horseback ride. On her return home, the robust Grand Duchess suddenly and mysteriously collapsed, shocking everyone. Ruslan notes that this underhanded tactic aligns perfectly with Albert's typical methods of elimination. Albert would relentlessly persecute his targets, exploiting their weaknesses until he could completely destroy them. While the imperial physicians remained completely clueless, Ruslan suspected foul play from the very beginning. Ruslan discovered that his adopted mother's internal energy core had been thrown into violent chaos. It became clear that an insidious poison targeting one's vital energy core had been used against her. Ruslan's private investigation revealed that the culprit who administered the poison was definitely an insider from the Grand Duchy. Charlotte points out the critical flaw: they still lack any hard physical evidence of the poison or the culprit. Ruslan explains that he faked Juchu's poisoning and death state to replicate his mother's exact symptoms. The ruse was designed to make the original poisoner suspect there was another traitor operating within the estate. The fear of being replaced or eliminated would drive the culprit into an anxious state of paranoia. This relentless anxiety would cloud the culprit's judgment, forcing them to make a desperate mistake. As Charlotte ponders his theory, Ruslan suddenly breaks her train of thought by calling her name. Ruslan requests that they meet later in the evening for a private supper together. She reluctantly agrees to the meeting, inwardly wondering what elaborate schemes he is plotting next. At dinner, Charlotte engages in polite conversation, mentioning her fondness for various noble pursuits. A plate of fresh green salad topped with sliced raw mushrooms is served before them. Elegantly dressed for dinner, Ruslan looks across the table at his contract partner with an attentive gaze. The speed at which I speak will be slightly faster. The initial lighthearted mood shifts as they exchange a quiet, loaded look across the table. Staring at the dish, Charlotte is hit with a wave of bittersweet memories from her former life. She remembers forcing herself to eat and enjoy the very dishes Albert loved just to please him. She wonders if her former comrades merely viewed her as a convenient, subservient accessory to Albert's ambitions. A dark shadow falls over Charlotte's face as intense resentment burns in her bright blue eyes.
She tightly clenches her fists, swearing silent, absolute vengeance against everyone who betrayed her once she escapes.
A sudden sound snaps Charlotte out of her deep, vengeful thoughts, catching her completely off guard. Ruslan gently addresses her, his warm smile easing the heavy tension in the dining room. She finds herself amused and skeptical as he suddenly brings up sweet jam like an attentive fiancé. Charlotte quietly takes a slow, graceful sip of her tea to compose herself during their conversation.
Her eyes suddenly widen in sheer shock as she tastes the tea, instantly sensing something unusual.
Unaware of her shock, Ruslan brightly asks if she enjoys the unique northern-style blend he selected. Forcing a polite smile, she carefully lowers her cup while trying to hide her internal alarm. The heavy dining room door suddenly creaks open, interrupted by an icy, unwelcome voice from the threshold. Whipping her head around, Charlotte instantly recognizes the voice, her expression freezing in disbelief. A deliberate, echoing step marks the grand entrance of their unexpected visitor into the dining hall. A young lady with long, wavy brown hair adorned with a floral bow approaches with an elegant stride. Lady Dorothea, a young noblewoman with striking red eyes, sits at the table with a serious, guarded expression. A spoon gently stirs a warm cup of amber tea as Ruslan dryly notes his sister's rare presence. Holding his teacup, Ruslan offers a faint, polite smile that masks his deeper intentions during their meeting. Dorothea's expression darkens with intense irritation as she prepares to make a sharp defensive declaration. Dorothea passionately asserts her claim as the family's true successor, catching Charlotte completely off guard. Her sudden heavy cough interrupts the tension, reminding everyone of Dorothea's frail blood-related lineage. Despite her fierce pride, Dorothea remains a vulnerable 16-year-old girl bound by her tragically weak and sickly body. With Dorothea unable to rule, leadership of the Grand Duchy naturally shifts to the capable adopted son, Ruslan. Ruslan smoothly suggests Dorothea focus on her recovery, subtly undermining her authority under the guise of concern. A sudden, sharp slam echoes through the room as Dorothea furiously demands Ruslan's attention. Clutching her chest, Dorothea angrily accuses Ruslan of overstepping his bounds and merely acting as a temporary stand-in. Ruslan remains perfectly composed even as Dorothea desperately rages against her perceived helplessness. Dorothea fiercely claims she has proof that Ruslan bribed a physician to send a poisoned teapot to her. She passionately screams accusations of his poisoning attempt, refusing to let the duchy fall into his hands. Standing tall at the table, Dorothea demands Ruslan's immediate banishment from the estate. Ruslan casually dismisses her wild accusations as mere hallucinations brought on by grief over the Duchess's passing. The listening servants are left utterly stunned and anxious by the high-stakes confrontation unfolding before them. Tension shifts as a hand smoothly slides over a delicate golden braid. In a surprising display of affection, Ruslan pulls a startled Charlotte directly onto his lap. Dorothea stands completely frozen, her rage instantly dissolving into pure, bewildered confusion at the unexpected sight. The shocking announcement connects the elegant blonde companion directly to Dorothea's beloved, supposedly deceased maid, Juju. Surrounded by blooming yellow roses, Charlotte looks on with a silent, calculating gaze. A sudden crash echoes in memory as a shattered teapot lies broken on the cold floor. A painful memory flashes by of a desperate cry for Juju during a moment of tragic loss. Dorothea's tearful face is shown as she desperately begged her companion to open her eyes. Dorothea demands clarification, her voice trembling with disbelief as she stares at the pair across the table. Keeping his cool, Ruslan simply calls out for Simon to reveal the truth of the situation. Simon enters and calmly confirms a mysterious event that took place at the Imperial Ice Prison days ago. Dorothea gasps in horror, struggling to comprehend how an imprisoned traitor could cause such catastrophic damage. Semen somberly validates her worst fears, confirming the dangerous escape of their hidden enemy. Ruslan explains that because the Imperial prison lies in Northern Territory, he must personally manage the chaotic aftermath. Dorothea frantically demands to know why Ruslan plans to travel alongside the woman she knew as Juju. Ruslan boldly declares his choice is his own, tightening his possessive hold on a silent Charlotte. As Charlotte's eyes widen, Ruslan smoothly slides his fingers into hers, solidifying their public alliance. Now recognized as a powerful capital noblewoman, Charlotte offers a polite mock apology to the stunned Dorothea. Dorothea stares in absolute betrayal, realizing the maid she once trusted was someone entirely different. Charlotte lets out a soft, mocking chuckle, thoroughly enjoying her absolute victory in their battle of wits. Taking a fragile step backward, Dorothea whispers in despair over the profound deception. Sobbing, Dorothea flees the dining hall, swearing she never wants to see either of them ever again. Once Dorothea departs, a quiet, contemplative shadow falls over Charlotte's usually sharp expression. She remembers simpler days when, disguised as Juju, she shared genuine moments of warmth with the sickly Dorothea. Outside the grand estate, servants diligently pack heavy chests onto carriages, preparing for the upcoming journey.
Dressed in heavy winter coats, Ruslan and Charlotte stroll together through the brisk, snow-dusted grounds.
Ruslan notes that keeping Dorothea out of the Emperor's sights was the safest way to protect her.
Amidst blooming pink roses, Charlotte softly asks if Ruslan is truly content bearing his sister's hatred.
Ruslan explains his willingness to play the villain because Dorothea was entrusted to him by his beloved benefactor.
He admits he would rather bear the burden alone than let his sister be swept into danger.
Two walk side by side into the winter air, united by their complex hidden sacrifices.
A sudden shout calls out to Count Keidel, signaling that their departure to the capital is officially underway.
Someone hesitantly approaches Ruslan, nervously requesting a private favor right before they begin their long journey.
Charlotte is caught completely off guard when Simon suddenly asks if he can accompany them on their trip. Simon eagerly explains his lifelong dream of seeing the legendary Imperial Palace before his time runs out. Back at the estate, Dorothea's intense interrogation of the physician sets off a chain of shocking revelations. Armed with new testimonies, Dorothea begins to unravel the dark truth behind the insidious poisoning plot.
The bribed physician's full confession completely exposes the conspiracy of the poisoned teapot right before their departure.
Charlotte quietly reflects on how Ruslan boldly feigned supreme authority and staged a mock poisoning to flush out the culprit. She realizes Ruslan's elaborate act was designed to trick the true mastermind into believing he was an accomplice. Looking out at the wintry forest, Ruslan remains highly skeptical, warning that a larger party will be harder to manage. Seaman passionately bows and pledges his absolute loyalty, promising to be of great use to his lord. Seeing Seaman's relentless determination, Ruslan lets out a subtle grin and decides to grant his request. As the carriage prepares to roll, Ruslan playfully warns Seaman that he must secure his own meals during the trip. Inside the rattling carriage, Charlotte silently ponders the critical choices their cornered enemy will soon be forced to make. Ruslan calmly notes that their target will eventually have to seek a desperate alliance or face total ruin. Charlotte raises a single sharp finger as she bluntly asks when they should officially eliminate the target. With an icy smile, Ruslan designates their crossing over Gwent Mountain as the perfect moment to strike. Charlotte tightly clenches her fist, her bright blue eyes burning with anticipation as their revenge play begins. The dark stage is officially set, with no turning back once the ruthless plan is put into motion. The scene shifts to the magnificent imperial capital, where a grand palace stands bathed in the warm light of sunset. Inside the grand hall, low murmurs of anticipation ripple through the air beneath a massive, glowing chandelier. Heavy double doors of the assembly room slowly creak open, drawing the immediate focus of everyone inside. A tense, expectant silence falls over the elite council members as they await highly anticipated update. Sitting at the head of the long table, the blonde-haired Albert commands absolute attention with his grim expression. Shock and disbelief instantly ripple across the faces of the council members as they receive the sudden news. Albert solemnly announces his command to have Charlotte's body transported to the imperial capital for a final viewing. Albert is visibly shaken by the tragic loss, staring into the distance while his subordinate stands silently behind him. Guild leader Irene, holding her fan, skeptically questions if handling the matter this way is truly wise. Palace Minister Dietrich adjusts his glasses, warning of a potential backlash from the powerful family of Empress Bathilde. Land Forces Marshal Pascalina coldly defends their actions, reminding everyone that they were the ones who executed the plan. Archbishop Jonathan smirks cynically, noting how Charlotte's sudden demise deprives him of a convenient warning story for others. A sudden sharp command rings out across the chamber, instantly demanding that everyone cease their bickering. Overwhelmed with grief, Albert covers his face and passionately orders the council to pay their respects to their fallen comrade. A heavy, suffocating silence sweeps over the ornate chamber as the gravity of Charlotte's death sinks in. Irene breaks the silence, softly inquiring about the exact circumstances surrounding Charlotte's sudden and tragic passing. Albert explains that a new, clueless prison guard knew nothing of the harsh, freezing realities of the ice prison. Deep down, the conspirators admit they completely crushed Charlotte, knowing she was far too powerful to ever let stand again. A nostalgic memory flashes of Charlotte in her former life, standing peacefully with her back to the world. In her past life, she was a beautiful brown-haired warrior whose warm smile hid a deadly, unparalleled strength. The council is struck by the sheer irony of such a legendary fighter dying fruitlessly from the northern cold. Irene stares downward with a deeply suspicious glare, flatly declaring her refusal to believe Charlotte is truly dead.
Pascalina explains that delivering a severe punishment was unavoidable given Empress Bathilde's highly influential and noble lineage.
Dietrich notes that eliminating Grand Duchess Licht was essential to successfully seizing control of the duchy at that moment. Jonathan rises from his seat with a dark, satisfied expression as the sinister motives of their plot come to light. Albert clasps his hands together in deep contemplation, the heavy weight of their numerous crimes pressing down on him. Albert's eyes glow with an intense, predatory yellow light as he reflects on the many lives he has taken. Amidst a brilliant flurry of blue roses, Charlotte's journey of disguised vengeance is beautifully and powerfully showcased. A delicate golden crown falls through a dark blue sky, symbolizing the tragic end of Charlotte's former noble life. Albert pushes himself up from his chair, resolutely ordering that they proceed with a quiet, private funeral. Pascalina, Dietrich, and Irene realize that with no other relatives left, they are the only ones who can claim her body. The council prepares to lay Charlotte to rest, entirely unaware that their supposedly deceased comrade is already planning their demise. The pink-haired woman walks away, telling Albert to let her know when Lotta arrives so they can conduct things privately. Dietrich asks Albert if that is all, to which the exhausted blonde emperor replies that he is going to rest. Dietrich warns the departing emperor that the source of the poison that killed Archduchess Recht remains on the agenda. A sudden, loud bang echoes as the double doors of the assembly room are slammed shut. Left alone in the quiet, library-like hall, Dietrich stands in silent, deep contemplation. Down below, the remaining council members look up in absolute bewilderment at the emperor's abrupt departure. A simple text block notes that while Lottie is supposedly dead, a deeper plan is already unfolding. Albert stands alone, coldly reflecting on his absolute, supreme authority as the emperor of the country. Staring into the distance, Albert ponders the news of Archduchess Rick's successor visiting from the north. He recalls Ruslan, the illegitimate child of Count Keitel, who is reportedly making a move for the throne. Albert determines that if the newly appointed Grand Duke is a power-hungry threat, he will easily eliminate him. A hand clenches tightly as Albert prepares to deal with Count Keitel upon his arrival. A nostalgic memory flashes of Albert and Charlotte sharing a warm, loving embrace amidst yellow roses. A sudden, painful gasp of gag echoes through the forest as a moment of violence disrupts the quiet surroundings. Startled by her nightmare, Lottie catches a falling unconscious guard in her arms. Lotta wonders why Albert's face suddenly flashed in her mind during her brief slumber. A sudden, soft rustle breaks the silence of the forest, putting Lottie on high alert. Turning around, Lotta is met by the calm presence of Ruslan standing close behind her. She secretly reflects on her current state, noting that her body cannot yet keep up with her powerful aura. Lotta looks up, mentally questioning what the guard had said earlier about the poison. Ruslan looks back at her silently, his expression calm and unreadable under the filtered forest light. She recalls the details of the assassination attempt involving poisoned woolen gloves delivered by a mysterious mouse-masked figure. A striking red and black graphic reveals that the culprit belonged to the Emperor's secret organization, the Deathless. Lottie recalls her past, remembering when she was originally in charge of that secret organization before Albert became emperor. She remembers how Albert promised her an official position only to reshuffle the organization into a palace department. Lottie deduces that this new, highly effective skin-seeping poison must have been newly developed by her enemies. Shifting her gaze to the trees, Lottie decisively suggests they head to the east. Ruslan asks with mild surprise if she intends to travel to that city. Lotta offers a subtle, knowing smile, confirming their upcoming destination. The scene shifts to a grand, bustling coastal harbor where a massive sailing ship lies docked. Inside the carriage, Lottie notes that most new drugs are trafficked here from the east before spreading. She reveals that an old doctor acquaintance who used to live here might help them find the poison's source. Ruslan asks if she plans to find the source of the poison with the doctor's help. Lotta confirms her plan, adding that she also hopes to hire the doctor to care for her body. A dark text box expresses her intense desire to slaughter the conspirators who betrayed her. She looks at a visual representation of her 5 enemies, realizing she cannot defeat them all at once. Lotta admits her own complicated role, recognizing that she had a hand in the Archduchess's death. She reminds herself that, after all, she was the one who made Albert the emperor. Ruslan remains silent, his red eyes fixed on Lot as she details her upcoming plans. She stares at the conspirators, her dark thoughts of vengeance weighing heavily on her. Lotta struggles with her conflicting feelings, acknowledging her own hand in making Albert the emperor. Looking ahead, Lotte stresses the need to be careful as they prepare for what lies ahead. With determination in her eyes, she declares her desire for Albert to face the one who causes his downfall. Ruslan looks back at her silently, offering a subtle, supportive look. A rhythmic rattle sounds as the driver calls out, announcing they have finally reached their destination. Stepping out of the carriage, Lotte and Ruslan look ahead, officially marking their arrival.
Looking around, Lotte is filled with curiosity as she experiences the grand capital for the very first time.
As they stroll through the city, Lotte explains her thoughts on choosing the most successful method of action. Ruslan offers a subtle, warm smile, playfully noting that she is far from being a true villainess. Feigning annoyance, Lotte walks ahead while Ruslan quickly offers a polite apology to keep up. Lotte observes Count Keitel silently, reflecting that despite his rumors, he does not seem like an immature child. Rumors quickly circulate that Count Keitel was delayed by trivial affairs instead of traveling straight to the capital. Keitel grimly resolves to embrace these scandalous rumors, knowing he has absolutely nothing left to lose. A simple narrative note reveals that the scandalous rumors of Count Keitel's delay are entirely false. Startled by a sudden snap, the blonde-haired Lotte turns quickly as Ruslan asks if she is all right. Lotte looks up in startled shock as Ruslan stands closely over her in the lavishly decorated chamber. Ruslan questions her plan to find the doctor, curious about her methods in this chaotic city. Lotte explains with a knowing smile that the mysterious doctor prefers to conduct her business at night. Ruslan gently touches her leg, softly suggesting she rest for the day before their dangerous journey begins. Lotte pauses, looking at Ruslan with a mixture of quiet contemplation and lingering surprise. Lottie playfully accuses Ruslan of trying to peek at her undergarments, which he calmly and stoically denies. Lottie smirks, teasing that he must get comfortable with such playful banter if they are to act like lovers. Ruslan calmly offers to massage her legs if they are sore, maintaining his characteristically stoic composure. Ruslan stands bewildered as Lottie stubbornly insists her legs are fine and refuses to be held back. Shifting scenes, the dark blue night sky stretches over the towering battlements of the bustling harbor city. They slip into the lively dockside market, which remains surprisingly active despite the dangerously late hour. Shady merchants peddle mysterious vials to curious onlookers, casting an uneasy, uncanny atmosphere over the harbor. Adjusting his dark top hat, Ruslan notes why their carriage driver was so hesitant to enter this place. Wrapped in her blue hooded cloak, Lottie explains that this market is a notorious hub for smuggled goods. Ruslan remains skeptical, questioning if they can truly find her elusive doctor friend in such a chaotic crowd. Lottie confidently asserts she knows exactly where they are going without needing to think twice. Her boots click rhythmically against the stone pavement as she strides purposefully down the quiet, shadowed alleyways. Lottie confidently pushes a door open, declaring she knows exactly where the doctor is based on her memories. A dark-haired man sitting inside turns around in surprise, coldly demanding to know the identities of the intruders. Lottie addresses the sitting man with sharp disrespect, instantly setting a hostile, tense tone for their sudden encounter. Drawing a sharp dagger, Lottie presses the cold blade to his neck to force him to reveal the doctor. The man angrily retorts at her rudeness, but Lottie remains entirely unfazed, pressing her demand for the doctor. Lottie offers a sweet yet chilling smile, demanding once more that the man reveal the doctor's whereabouts. Calm, authoritative voice suddenly intercedes, instructing Lottie to put the knife down since she has been heard. Lot looks up in recognition, while Ruslan quietly covers his face with a handkerchief as they face the newcomer. The dark-haired Dr. Angela holds her pipe and sternly demands to know their relationship with the deceased Charlotte. A memory flashes of research papers and scrolls recalling Angela's first fateful meeting with Charlotte years ago. In her memory, a younger Angela stares in quiet gratitude during her early days working alongside Charlotte. This information is for educational purposes only and does not constitute medical advice or a diagnosis. Always seek the advice of a qualified healthcare professional or seek care before making any decisions related to your health or well-being. An innocent girl from the past curiously asks how to distinguish edible mushrooms from deadly poisonous ones. Not long after their discussion on deadly toxins, news arrived of the first prince's sudden, unexpected death. Angela recalls the heavy suspicion and dread that filled her upon hearing of the prince's mysterious demise. Angela remembers being bound as a prisoner, learning of her family's execution while receiving a final message. Angela recalls a mysterious companion leaning in to whisper the secret, omitted contents of a final will. The memories flash back to the tense, quiet moment of confinement before her eventual escape from her captors. Gritting her teeth in remorse, young Angela was left to bear the heavy weight of the dark secrets. Eager to escape the dangerous imperial schemes, Angela decided to flee the capital for the distant harbor port. Returning to the present, Angela demands to know their connection to Charlotte, the keeper of those dark secrets. Lottie coldly dismisses the old man from the room, ensuring they can discuss their secrets in absolute privacy. Lottie cryptically reveals that Angela herself was the one who passed her that final sacred will long ago. Invoking the will of Viscountess Moden, Lottie warmly greets Angela, shocking the doctor with her secret knowledge. Angela freezes in absolute shock, desperately demanding to know how this stranger could possibly possess such secrets. Lottie explains the unbelievable miracle of how Charlotte's memories have been successfully transferred into her resurrected body. A definitive text block confirms her complex dual identity as both Juju and the legendary warrior Charlotte. Angela struggles to comprehend this impossible temple miracle, while Lottie calmly tells her to simply accept it. With Angela now on her side, Lottie confidently prepares her final plans to completely shake up the capital. Lottie warmly offers her support, inviting her companion to seek them out if he ever tires of running from the Emperor. He adjusts his top hat, promising their protection if she ever seeks out Count Keitel. Angela hesitates with a surprised expression, stopping them to mention one final crucial piece of information. She inquires about the mysterious new type of poison currently circulating within the kingdom. Under the starry night sky, the dark sea waves crash softly against the harbor docks. The scene shifts to the quiet city as Ruslan questions her risk of exposure for the doctor's sake. He looks back, wondering if she was truly that desperate to recruit her old doctor friend. Lottie remains silent beneath her blue hood, her blue eyes filled with quiet reflection. Strolling down the street, Lottie explains the necessity of lowering her guard to gather the information she needs. She recalls her past with Angela, remembering that they shared a deeper bond despite their strict business relationship. Lottie softly reveals that the doctor was the only person who genuinely grieved when she was imprisoned. Ruslan listens quietly to her confession, his expression softening as he absorbs her words. Lottie wonders aloud if the doctor had a deeply personal reason for reacting so emotionally to her past imprisonment. Ruslan's voice notes it would be tragic if she were surrounded solely by traitors during her time of need. She stares at his back in stunned silence, deeply touched by his unexpectedly comforting words. Lottie quickly lightens the mood, playfully teasing him for acting cocky once more.
They arrive before a massive stone building under the night sky, questioning if this is the location Angela spoke of.
The graphic reveals the building serves as the secret base of an organization trafficking exotic poisonous herbs. Lotta observes the ships, noting how illegal goods are smuggled into the city through rented merchant vessels. Adjusting his stance with a sudden sharp clack, Ruslan dismisses the smugglers as mere typical pyramid criminals. Great lid slides open to reveal illicit green herbs, indicating the traffickers must have powerful municipal connections. A close-up shows her holding a leaf, explaining that the raw herbs cannot produce an immediate toxic effect alone. Angela explains that the imported herbs must undergo a precise refining process to become a lethal poison. Lottie calls out to the Count as Angela details disturbing rumors of human experimentation on Eastern migrants. Ruslan checks his pocket watch, calmly asking how much time she needs to deal with the guards inside. The guards inside are startled by her presence, demanding to know what the intruders are talking about. Unraveling her long blue ribbon with deadly grace, Lot fiercely commands the hostile guards to get lost. The blue ribbon wraps tightly around a guard's neck in a flash, catching him completely off guard. With a swift, powerful pull, the guard is knocked off his feet and crashes heavily to the ground. Framed by elegant blue roses, Lottie confidently declares that 40 seconds is more than enough to handle them. Morning light floods the scene as the night ends, transitioning to a peaceful chamber decorated with white blossoms. Sunlight shines upon a desk where letters written in elegant cursive script lie next to a fountain pen. Inside the sunlit room, Ruslan quietly adjusts his collar as he prepares to make his next move. He glances aside, thinking that he should slip out quietly while his sleeping companion rests. Lotta remains fast asleep, resting peacefully beneath a white blanket surrounded by beautiful blooming pink roses. He recalls how she effortlessly knocked out every guard at dawn, her powerful aura overflowing with incredible vitality. He gently kisses the lace ribbon, promising to quietly clean up the remaining mess she left behind. Outside the chamber, the brown-haired servant boy grumbles in annoyance at the constant chaos. Sitting at her desk, the mayor of Oberhofen sighs in exasperation over the continuous fighting among the merchant groups. Visual recall shows the mysterious duo who disrupted the warehouse, frustrating the merchants' plans. The servant announces an uninvited guest, prompting the mayor to complain about visitors arriving entirely without notice. The mayor angrily demands a better bribe than silk before she will agree to see anyone, ordering them to leave. The servant nervously announces Count Keitel's arrival as Ruslan steps into the room with effortless, sparkling grace. Flustered and blushing, the mayor immediately changes her tune, quickly ordering everyone else out of the room. She greets him with polite flattery, secretly surprised that the rumored heir stealer does not look like a scoundrel. Keitel offers a dazzling, charming smile as he begins to explain his nighttime walk along the harbor. The mayor is startled when Keitel mentions coming across something highly amusing during his late-night stroll. He stands poised in his dark suit, holding the documents that contain proof of the illegal harbor activities. The mayor hastily offers lavish gifts, including fine Eastern silk and decorative swords, to appease the visiting noble. The servant bows respectfully, asking the powerful count what he would like to do next. Soaking peacefully in a warm rose-scented bath, blonde-haired Lottie questions the necessity of their recent extreme actions. Standing with crossed arms, dark-haired Ruslan firmly dismisses the complaints of the departing submissive house servants. Terrified by the threats made while Lottie slept, the servants hurriedly carry away the lavish peace offerings. With a sharp, smug smile, Ruslan calmly insists he merely pointed out the local merchants' severe wrongdoings. He recalls confronting the corrupt, gray-haired mayor of Oberhofen at her desk about suspicious harbor activities at dawn. The memory reveals a huddled group of bruised, miserable child refugees hidden away in the dark warehouse. Ruslan confronts the defensive gray-haired mayor, reminding her of the kingdom's strict laws prohibiting slave trafficking. Shaking with sheer terror, the mayor gasps as Ruslan presents undeniable documentary evidence of her complicit actions. He details how their seized account books prove tax evasion under the guise of selling entertainment items. With a piercing, red-eyed glare, Ruslan coldly demands if she truly claims ignorance of these severe crimes. Standing tall, Ruslan pressures the bowing mayor, asking how she expects the imperial court to overlook tax evasion. Leaning in close, he menacingly orders her to thoroughly clean up this illicit mess before imperial investigators arrive. A theoretical concept notes the strategy of subtly nudging those at the top to create favorable chaos. Turning to the present, Ruslan stands quietly in the room, arms crossed as he explains his methods. He details how the illegal poisonous herbs were confiscated and how the traffickers normally hid their victims. Peering just above the bubbly bathwater, Lottie quietly notes that the smugglers must have paid a heavy physical price. Ruslan looks aside thoughtfully, warning that things will inevitably become dangerous once the shocking news spreads. Outside, the heavy chests of confiscated poison sink silently into the deep blue harbor waters. Rising slightly from the bath, Lottie immediately asks about the fate of the rescued children. Ruslan looks down with a solemn expression, admitting that most of the displaced children had nowhere left to go. Fortunately, the secure Northern Territory already possesses the necessary resources and provisions to house these refugees. Working under pressure, the gray-haired mayor hastily writes a letter to coordinate the children's safe relocation. Ruslan watches her closely, quietly impressed by the unexpected efficiency of their desperate coordinated plan. The scene transitions to the steady, quiet drip of water from the elegant brass shower head. Stepping out in a white robe, Lottie dries her long blonde hair, deeply reflecting on her complex bond with Ruslan. Ruslan politely turns away, handing her a towel and advising her to dry herself off first. Lottie smiles softly, reminding him she is merely a useful villainess who will never complain about being used. Standing behind the door, Ruslan thoughtfully notes that splitting their duties by specialization is simply more efficient. Lottie looks up with quiet determination, expressing her sincere gratitude for his reliable strategic assistance. Lotta recalls her past life as a warrior alongside a red-cloaked man, remembering when she acted solely as his sword. Framed by elegant gold roses, Ruslan stands as a contrast, having promised to serve as her ultimate protective shield. This comforting realization brings a soft, genuine smile to Lot's face as she looks forward. Poking her head out from behind the door, Lottie playfully questions why Ruslan is still covering his eyes. Holding a document, Ruslan complains that his sister dislikes him precisely because he avoids such sentimental matters. Now dressed in an elegant white and pink gown, Lottie nods in firm agreement with his pragmatic view. Elsewhere, the upright and noble Dorothea receives the urgent documents detailing the plan to save the displaced children. Amidst dark, thorny vines, a foreboding message questions the fate of the chaotic and corrupted imperial city. Two weary children huddle together under the shade of a tree, symbolizing the ongoing suffering in the kingdom. A gentle hand reaches out to pluck a beautiful, blooming pink rose from a lush garden bush. Holding the fresh rose, Lotta reflects grimly on how the tyrant will surely destroy the East next. He looks up as a pair of dark boots approaches, sensing the arrival of a highly anticipated visitor. The dark-haired Dr. Angela strides confidently into the sunlit room, speaking of the worsening imperial state. Smiling warmly, Lottie holds her rose and gladly welcomes the skilled doctor inside her private chambers. Angela immediately checks Lottie's wrist, frowning deeply as she notes the strained condition of her blood vessels. A blinding celestial light shines brilliantly, reflecting the profound shock of a sudden miraculous realization. Looking up with wide, trembling eyes, Angela gasps in utter disbelief as the truth begins to dawn on her. Lottie smiles radiantly, warmly greeting the stunned doctor and confirming her true resurrected identity. Overwhelmed with emotion, Angela bows her head respectfully, deeply moved to see Miss Charlotte alive after 5 years. Lotta gently requests that she use the name Juju instead, thanking her sincerely for the crucial poison info. Looking back determinedly, Lottie declares that with Angela's help, they have finally begun to avenge Archduchess Recht. The conversation turns to the complex reasons behind their alliance as they stand beneath the elegant chandelier. Angela directly questions if their ultimate goal is indeed to assassinate the Emperor. With a bright, confident smile, Lottie shamelessly confirms that the assassination is indeed her true objective. Lotta explains her plan to travel to the Imperial City with the Count, acknowledging the unpredictable dangers ahead. Angela requests time to manage her store first, but promises to come whenever she is needed. Looking determined, Lottie silently recognizes that their upcoming path will certainly be far from easy. Angela reveals that a mysterious figure recently struck a deal to distribute the refined poison through the merchants. Angela recalls her fear of a man close to the Emperor, realizing she needs a safe place to belong. Noting Albert's past attempts to control her allies, Lottie urgently asks Angela for the mysterious contact's name. The atmosphere grows incredibly tense as Angela prepares to reveal the true name of the dangerous conspirator. Ruslan is taken aback as he repeats the name Hilarion, processing this crucial new piece of information. Resting her chin on her hand, Lottie firmly confirms Hilarion is indeed the person behind the transactions. Lottie recalls a once faithful servant whose ambition corrupted him, leading him to commit perjury against the Emperor. Lottie explains how Hilarion cleared his record and transferred the horrific experiments to the Merchant Guild. Ruslan theorizes that Hilarion is undoubtedly connected to the illegal poison trafficking originating from the East. Lottie fiercely resolves to eliminate the corrupt elements that have accumulated in the capital over the last 5 years. Offering a supportive and charming smile, Ruslan warmly volunteers to assist her in cleansing the capital. As their carriage rolls forward under the sunny sky, Lotte asks Ruslan for a special personal favor. Adorned in a beautiful flowery gown and bonnet, Lottie requests to make a quick stop along their journey. They look out toward the vast, clear blue sky as they approach their mysterious destination. With a nostalgic and slightly solemn expression, Lotte names the destination of her stop as Mudden. She quietly reveals that this simple countryside town was once her cherished childhood hometown. The peaceful landscape of the southeast central region unfolds, dominated by quiet, vast agricultural fields. A peaceful golden sunset highlights the fields where barley and wheat serve as the primary source of life. Walking through the tall grass hand in hand, Lotte finds comfort in seeing her hometown unchanged. Ruslan looks around, observing the simple and charming country style that defines the peaceful agricultural landscape. A playful voice asks if the untamed nature of the countryside seems a bit too wild. The peaceful flora highlights the quiet nature of a town with little entertainment outside of local festivals. Surrounded by fluttering yellow butterflies and golden sunlight, Lottie basks in the warmth of her past memories. A memory reveals how Albert's grand ambitions led a simple country girl to leave her shabby hometown behind. The freckled girl's simple wish was never for grand power, but merely to find happiness away from home. The warm sunset glows over the horizon, casting a bittersweet light over the silent countryside fields. Stepping forward, Lotta guides Ruslan as they prepare to arrive at Morden's estate. A sudden, brilliant twinkling reveals a magnificent hidden rose garden belonging to a local countryside noble. The meticulously tended garden bursts with vibrant red roses, showcasing its magnificent and elegant beauty. The memory of the freckled girl happily tending the blooming garden evokes a sense of deep, nostalgic warmth. A soft, gentle rustling sound echoes as Lotta's elegant green shoe steps onto the overgrown grass. She steps into the clearing, only to find the hometown estate now reduced to silent, crumbling ruins. Broken wooden planks and scattered stones lie abandoned on the grass, a somber testament to past destruction. A quiet sadness washes over Lottie as she surveys the heartbreaking decay of her once beautiful childhood home. Ruslan stands behind her, gravely noting that not a single gravestone remains in the desolate area. Ruslan gazes at her with a gentle, deeply empathetic expression, sharing in her silent grief. Pointing her finger toward the distance, Lottie softly directs his attention to a specific spot. The scene transitions into a bright, ethereal white void framed by elegant wall sconces. A hollow archway reveals an empty, desolate chamber that was once filled with life and warmth. Standing amidst the emptiness, Lottie keeps her composure, her face reflecting a bittersweet acceptance. Ruslan watches her closely, softly offering a quiet word of comfort to ease her heavy heart. Lotta pauses, her voice trailing off as she prepares to voice her deepest, most painful memories. Heavy realization sets in, acknowledging the natural weight of her lingering sorrow. A painful memory resurfaces of the freckled girl crying out over her desperate, unrequited struggle to receive love. In a poignant memory, the young freckled girl looks up hopefully at the dark-haired youth. The dark-haired youth entrusts a final, urgent message to be passed on to Charlotte. A heavy, silent darkness looms as a bittersweet apology echoes through the painful memory. A vibrant sunset sky unfolds as a questioning voice wonders about the necessity of their remorse. Behind cracked glass and binding chains, the young freckled girl stands trapped in a web of lies. The red-eyed, dark-haired man named Albert stares in profound shock as the painful truth hits him. Another shattered memory reveals malicious rumors detailing Charlotte's supposed desperation for male affection. Memory turns cruel as the freckled girl's laughter is drowned out by cries of impending doom. Overwhelmed by betrayal, the young girl screams in sheer rage against being dragged into their schemes.
Her strength fails entirely as she collapses backward with a heavy flop.
A sudden grasp halts her fall as Albert catches her in his arms. Tears stream down her flushed face as she desperately demands to know why this is happening. Her anguished screams echo loudly, reflecting the immense pain of a broken heart. A blinding golden light bursts forth, completely consuming the agonizing scene in its brilliant radiance. The painful illusion shatters completely, leaving behind nothing but broken fragments of the past. Amidst the fading light, Albert holds her in a tight, desperate embrace of silent comfort. An oppressive darkness of deep despair settles over the vast starry night sky. A brilliant shooting star cuts through the endless blue cosmos, a lone beacon in the night. Looking up at the stars, Lottie sheds silent tears as she comes to her senses. The serene blue stardust swirls gently, marking a quiet transition back to reality. Lotta looks up in bewilderment, realizing the beautiful starry night sky was merely a powerful magic spell. Ruslan smiles down at her with gentle, warm eyes, softly confirming his magical intervention. The glowing night sky begins to dissolve, revealing that the beautiful scenery was just an illusion. Clutching his shoulder, Lottie notices that the color of Ruslan's aura has shifted as well. Ruslan explains that he simply used his magical power to bring her comfort in her sorrow. Deeply touched by his unexpected kindness, Lotta gazes up at him with wide, emotional blue eyes. Reassuring him, her hand softly grazes his arm as she declares that she is finally all right. Ruslan nods in understanding, preparing to return her to the real world. With a quick flick off of his fingers, the magical illusion begins to instantly vanish. The vibrant, sunlit woods suddenly appear once more as they return hand in hand to reality. Basking in the warm sunlight, Lottie resolutely acknowledges her duty to return to her path. The bright sun filters through the forest canopy, casting a warm, hopeful glow over their journey. Lottie questions if Albert's assumptions about her past crimes were completely mistaken from the start. Ruslan looks at her seriously, noting that true royalty does not stain its crown with blood. A grim vision of a blood-stained royal chamber serves as a warning against misplaced trust. The harsh reality of the East's decay is represented by displaced children suffering without homes. Lana stands with fierce determination, ready to reclaim her destiny through her current vessel. The portrait of Emperor Albert serves as a reminder of his many costly historical mistakes. Clenching her fist tightly, Lottie vows to take matters directly into her own capable hands. Ruslan listens intently, deeply admiring her unshakable resolve and clear sense of purpose. A grim reminder notes that Albert still lacks a proper heir to secure his throne. Without a successor, the entire corrupt royal family is inevitably doomed to total annihilation. The warm sunset sky highlights the unforeseen consequences of their upcoming political moves. Ruslan looks down thoughtfully, carefully calculating the high stakes of their dangerous alliance. Lotta reveals her secret knowledge that the survivors of Iphania are still alive. A historical painting illustrates the emperor's fear of rebellion, which led to Iphigenia's forced dispersal. A bright explosion of light symbolizes the potential for the scattered survivors to reunite and rise. Confident in their plan, Lotta offers her assistance while noting there is still a catch. A sudden, brilliant burst of magical energy crackles through the air, highlighting her words. Ruslan listens gravely, acknowledging that the division of the mainland will inevitably continue. Lottie nods in silent agreement, her bright green eyes focused on the path forward. Dark blood-red mist swirls as a grim thought questions if the Count seeks more than just revenge. Ruslan warns Lode in the sunlit woods that his delayed judgment will inevitably impact her as well. Lotta looks ahead with a serious expression, questioning what their next move will be. She boldly proposes that Ruslan step forward and claim his place as the Prince of Aphenia. Hesitating at the weight of her own words, Lottie pauses in quiet reflection. Ruslan responds thoughtfully, admitting he has never once envisioned himself as a prince. Lottie passionately reminds him of his royal bloodline, but Ruslan dismisses it as a mere accident of birth. The dark castle silhouette evokes the memory of his father's tragic failure to protect their homeland and people. Ruslan turns away, admitting it feels shameful to claim his fallen royal origins. Lotta gently challenges him, noting his lack of ambition does not mean he is entirely without plans. Turning back with a sharp, crimson-eyed gaze, Ruslan looks at her with silent, calculating intensity. An elegant diagram of a family tree explains how the successor family Richt could produce the next emperor. A portrait reveals Dorothea of the Richt family, a true candidate deliberately targeted by the fearful emperor. A sudden spark of realization hits Lottie as she pieces together the succession conspiracy. Ruslan smiles knowingly, pointing to his little sister as a key figure in their plans. He proudly recalls Dorothea's fierce determination to protect the Grand Dukedom even during her youth. Ruslan reassures Lotta that Dorothea has the perfect character to shelter the children they rescued. While Ruslan reiterates his disinterest in the throne, Lotta declares she knows the perfect person for it. Lotta envisions Dorothea rising to claim the crown, overcoming the legacy of royal assassination. Ruslan thoughtfully strokes his chin, noting how easily the political playing field could be shaken. Looking down at her warmly, Ruslan confidently states he is unafraid because he has Lot with him. Lottie looks away, her profile illuminated as she gets lost in her bittersweet memories. Deep blue light swirls as she recalls Albert's passionate but empty promises of an eternal future. She notes that, unlike Albert, Ruslan makes no false promises of the future but remains dedicated to the present. Smiling brightly, Lottie resolutely declares that they must return to the capital now that they have a plan. Ruslan smiles back, dryly predicting that the corrupt merchant they discussed will face execution first. A dark, textured background looms as a menacing thought asserts that finding Hilarion will be easy. Walking hand in hand through the sunset field, Lottie asks how to destroy the enemy, while Ruslan suggests visiting first. Falling gold coins symbolize Ruslan's strategy to buy out the merchant's organization or violently crush them if they refuse. Lotta's elegant green shoe steps through the golden grass as she questions his financial approach. Walking side by side, Lottie skeptically questions if he really intends to negotiate business with a dangerous trafficker. Lotta pauses in surprise as Ruslan gently reaches his hand out toward her face. Smiling warmly, Ruslan explains that securing someone priceless makes any vast sum of gold completely worth it. Looking up at him with a soft smile, Lottie quietly accepts his reassurance. A sudden, chaotic flashback reveals a younger Lottie fiercely strangling a man while demanding $10,000. A bright burst of magical lightning highlights her blood-stained hand as the brutal flashback concludes. The scene transitions to the Grand Imperial Palace, standing silent under a cold, starry night sky. Inside the silent palace, a magnificent crystal chandelier casts a pale, eerie light over the chambers. Emperor Albert sits alone in the dim room, his back turned to the vast, empty hall. He gently caresses the dark hair of a sleeping, freckled girl, lost in silent grief. Looking up with a deeply sorrowful expression, Albert whispers Lottie's name into the empty room. He recalls tender memories of their youth, remembering how he loved her shy nature despite her self-doubt. Albert hangs his head in profound sorrow, haunted by the ghost of their past. A stark black void represents his cold refusal to allow anyone into his sanctuary. Despite the restriction, the Minister of Internal Affairs enters the chamber holding an urgent report. The minister adjusts his glasses, insisting he must report a critical issue immediately. Without even turning to face him, Albert coldly commands the minister to speak. The horror of their situation is revealed as the minister delivers the shocking news of Hilarion's death. The minister closes his report, noting that details remain unknown due to the total destruction of Hilarion's organization. Disbelief and planning loom in the dark as they discuss a dismantled poison pipeline and an unexpected death. Standing together in the palace corridor, the dark-haired advisor admits to Albert that he missed his chance. A tense hand clenches into a tight fist as the advisor questions if they must report their failure. The advisor grimly notes that even if he is possessed, he must face what remains of the dead. The bright, blue-tinted palace hallway stands quiet and empty, reflecting a brief moment of heavy silence. He releases a heavy, tired sigh as he struggles to compose himself amidst the mounting pressure. Looking upon the lifeless, freckled girl, the advisor notes the tragic conflict between mourning a friend and imperial duty. Framed by a magnificent garden archway, the elegant blonde woman prepares for the high stakes of Hapgum Day. Albert looks down somberly, noting the sudden and suspicious arrival of Count Keitel in the capital. The advisor silently nods in grave agreement, acknowledging the rising political tension.
The forced relocation of the old Grand Duke's chain servants signals a brutal and thorough sweep of the estate. Albert thoughtfully observes that the strange rumors from the north appear to be entirely true. Gazing at the rose-patterned dress, the silent decision is made to immediately visit the Empress. Albert suddenly turns back and commands his advisor to send Lotta to his chambers, causing instant shock. The advisor reacts in sheer panic, sweating profusely as he desperately calls out Albert's name. Albert whispers Lottie's name in profound grief, haunted by the memory of her pleading for him to wait. A heavy echoing slam resounds as the grand double doors shut tight on his departing words. Walking away together, Albert bitterly regrets the simple gestures of affection that once moved her heart. A delicate black lace hat decorated with rose embroidery and long ribbons catches her eye. The shopkeeper highlights the intricate vine rose patterns, noting how perfectly they would suit blonde hair. Looking at the lavishly displayed jewelry under the glowing chandelier, the customer hesitates at the steep price. Admiring the elegant rose pendant, she ultimately decides to pass and asks to see something else. Dorothea and her pink-haired maid look up in sudden surprise as a gentleman approaches. Ruslan stands before them in his finest attire, his striking red eyes and noble bearing commanding total attention. Ruslan looks at Dorothea skeptically, questioning if she really needs to spend the price of a carriage. Dorothea gazes up at him with deep affection, her bright blue eyes filled with warm resolution. Smiling softly, Dorothea places the black lace hat on Ruslan, declaring that only precious things suit him. The grand residence of Grand Duke Richt in the capital remains heavily crowded with ambitious visitors. A pristine stone fountain sprays sparkling water in the sunlit garden, masking the estate's underlying tension. Silhouettes of endless guests, job seekers, and builders crowd the mansion to court the powerful new family. The tragic portrait of Annalise serves as a reminder of her brother Anton's premature and unjust death. Anton's desperate struggle in the capital ended in ruin after the merciless emperor dismissed his opposition to the war. Left with nothing but a hollow title, Anton passed away under the crushing weight of imperial despair. Dorothea collapses onto her blue velvet sofa, letting out a heavy, exhausted sigh after a long day. Dorothea's sharp blue eyes narrow as she anticipates the arrival of those seeking the new successor. Ruslan enters her room in a pristine white and gold military uniform, warmly asking about their new home. Dorothea gasps softly in surprise, her eyes widening as she welcomes him back. Dorothea smiles warmly, confirming she likes the house before immediately inquiring about their human trafficking investigation. Ruslan closes his eyes with a confident smile, assuring her that the operation is going well. Sitting close beside her, Ruslan reveals that they have successfully seized the master human trafficking ledger. The detailed pages of the record book lay open, completely exposing the traffickers' elaborate and illegal operations. Dorothea looks at him seriously, reminding him of his impending obligation to enter the imperial palace. Their coordinated strike successfully destroyed the poison source and completely severed the traffickers' supply lines at sea. Ruslan devises a plan to disguise the pork crisis as simple tax fraud to keep the mayor cooperative. Dorothea smiles brilliantly, highly pleased with his exceptionally clever and calculated move. A dark, vengeful thought consumes Dorothea as she wishes she could breach Albert's private quarters. She visualizes a fierce, satisfying confrontation, pinning Albert to the ground with a sword at his chest. Thump! A sudden shudder of absolute clarity snaps Dorothea back to reality, her eyes wide with lingering rage. Dorothea fiercely reins in her anger, reminding herself that she must wait for the perfect moment. The elderly butler bows politely, interrupting her dark thoughts to announce that it is time to depart. Ruslan acknowledges the plan, his expression turning thoughtful as he prepares for their next move. As Ruslan prepares to depart, Dorothea firmly insists on joining him to face the challenges ahead together. Draping his dark cloak over his uniform, Ruslan walks side by side with Dorothea through the grand palace hallway. Two faceless maids stand at attention, representing the silent and uncertain atmosphere within the grand estate. Dorothea casts a serious sideways glance, her mind already analytical and scanning her surroundings. Stopping in her tracks, she calls back to Ruslan, urging him to wait just a moment. Ruslan turns back to ask if she has something to say, while Dorothea cryptically denies it. Ruslan tilts his head in confusion, waiting for her explanation with a bewildered look. Leaning close, Dorothea points to her cheek and softly whispers for him to kiss her like others do. Ruslan's eyes widen slightly in mild embarrassment as he realizes what she is asking for. Dorothea gazes back at him with an innocent, expectant look, waiting for his response. Smiling gently, Ruslan plants a soft kiss on her cheek before bidding her farewell. Under the bright blue sky, she wishes him a safe trip, promising to eagerly await his return. Reviewing the documents at her desk, Dorothea notices that several of the newly hired employees hail from the north. Dorothea grows wary, reminding herself that not all of the new staff can be trusted to remain loyal. A maid interrupts her thoughts, announcing the arrival of a newly hired worker. A soft, sharp squeak echoes as the newcomer tentatively steps into the study. Nadia stands nervously before Dorothea, tightly clutching a heavy wooden trunk as she introduces herself. Bowing her head, Nadia expresses deep gratitude for being hired and eagerly offers to take on any chores. Dorothea looks up at the girl with a warm, knowing smile. Nadia tilts her head, slightly bewildered by Dorothea's silent but friendly reaction. In a blue-lit flashback, Ruslan shows Dorothea a list of accomplices linked to the deceased trafficker Hilarion. Spawning a familiar name on the list, Dorothea immediately halts the conversation in surprise. She points decisively to the name, declaring her intent to recruit this specific person. Ruslan observes her closely, curious if she shares a past connection with the individual. Looking back at him, Dorothea confirms with absolute certainty. Returning to the present, Dorothea approaches the nervous girl, intending to make her a close personal confidant. Dorothea places a reassuring hand on Nadia's arm, expressing complete confidence in her future service. Narration reveals Nadia's past identity as Charlotte's faithful former maid. Overcome with relief, Nadia bows her head in heartfelt appreciation. Dorothea smiles softly, pleased that she remains as reliable and calm as she remembers. The scene transitions to the Grand Palace where high-stakes royal decisions are being made. The quiet, sunlit hallways of the Imperial Castle stand silent as political tensions mount. Ruslan's attention is caught as the name of Count Keitel is announced in the corridor. Palace guard approaches Ruslan, delivering a direct summons to the Emperor's private quarters. Ruslan accepts the summons with a confident, knowing smile. Walking down the blue-carpeted corridor, Ruslan reminds himself that he acts as Dorothea's representative. The Grand Imperial Seal symbolizes the heavy expectations placed on the young leader. A golden field of barley represents the humble rural beginnings he once knew. Outside the double doors, the guard formally announces Count Keitel's arrival. Sitting in his high-backed red chair, Emperor Albert waits in solemn silence. A heavy, slow creak sounds as the massive doors swing open to admit the guest. Albert turns his tired, serious gaze forward as his visitor enters. Albert coolly remarks on Ruslan's ambition to claim a position of power. Ruslan bows deeply, greeting the Emperor with perfect noble etiquette. Looking up, Ruslan meets Albert's gaze with a sharp, calculating smile. A dramatic flash of tension underscores the silent battle of wills between the two men. A blonde woman in a lavish blue gown stands gracefully as the scene shifts. Inviting him inside, Albert casually gestures for Ruslan to take a seat first. Sitting across from him, Albert notes Ruslan's unexpected youth and his status as an adopted heir. Albert notes their age difference, casually pointing out that his guest is 7 years younger than him. The grand portrait of the late emperor serves as a silent reminder of his excessively long reign. Albert remarks on the surprising reality of such a young man leading the northern territories. Ruslan calmly responds, asserting that taking up his responsibilities is simply the right thing to do. Ruslan politely expresses his gratitude as a fresh, warm cup of tea sits before him. A solemn portrait commemorates a strong-willed woman who met her end well before her time. Oppressive thoughts dwell on a broken cup and the grim actions that followed. An ornate battle axe hanging on the wall serves as a stark symbol of imperial power and authority. Ruslan credits the Emperor's sent servant for the successful revival of his northern mining and construction operations. A calculating thought notes that the Emperor deliberately remembers his past interference in the north. Ruslan outlines the agricultural preparations currently underway in the northern fields. Albert acknowledges the update, musing about the volatile northern weather compared to the stable capital. Ruslan describes the recent harsh winter conditions, noting a severe northern snowstorm. A bleak, snow-covered forest marks the suspected final resting place of a despised woman. A sudden pang of silent grief and tension visible on Albert's face cuts through the conversation. Shifting focus, the neglect surrounding the sacred ceremonial jade is pointedly mentioned. Ruslan apologizes with deep, formal respect for being unable to provide a better final resting place. Albert solemnly reflects on the unforgivable nature of repeated inexperience and failure. Albert calmly instructs his guest to lift his head and face him directly. The conversation takes a metaphorical turn, comparing the hunting of hidden pests to their political enemies. A tightly clenched fist betrays the inner frustration and difficulty of capturing their elusive targets. Ruslan subtly hints that a troublesome informant or spy has recently been active in the capital. Albert lightly commends Ruslan's sharp intuition and excellent intelligence gathering. Ruslan cryptically suggests that some palace guests are highly receptive to circulating rumors. The strategic mention of the human trafficking operation is framed as a calculated display of ambition. Albert promises that the notable achievements of the Eastern Territories will receive their proper rewards soon. Albert announces an upcoming spring banquet, hinting at significant announcements to come. Ruslan politely bids farewell to the Emperor, bringing their high-stakes meeting to a close. Walking away, Ruslan quietly celebrates securing almost all the vital information he needed. Albert offers a final curt acknowledgement as his guest departs. The heavy atmosphere of the Imperial Palace begins to fade as the scene shifts. A quiet moment of transition marks a shift in location. Under a radiant, clear blue sky, the focus moves outside the city. A rhythmic clattering sounds as a grand carriage travels swiftly along the open road. Inside the moving carriage, Dorothea sits in elegant silence opposite her quiet new companion, Nadia. Dorothea casts a sharp, calculating glance forward, her brilliant blue eyes filled with quiet intent. Nadia sits with perfect, quiet composure, maintaining a respectful and slightly anxious silence. Breaking the silence, Nadia speaks softly, her voice filled with polite hesitation. Dorothea casually mentions secret details about their target's trade network, leaving Nadia visibly startled. Nadia falls silent, bowing her head in quiet compliance as she processes the unexpected revelation. Dorothea notes with a soft smile that Nadia remains exceptionally cautious and guarded. A brief flashback reveals Nadia's past life as a quiet, dedicated maid within a grand estate. Even from her youth, Nadia's unusually quiet and reserved nature caught the attention of others. That discreet personality proved invaluable when Nadia acted as a secret messenger during dangerous times. Dorothea deduces that Hilarion took Nadia as plunder following the chaotic collapse of their former stronghold. Deciding to keep her true identity hidden, Dorothea aims to slowly put the girl at ease. Utilizing her unique political leverage, Dorothea knows she can easily uncover any hidden prisoner records. Dorothea gently reassures Nadia by revealing she already knows about her mother's recovery from illness. Nadia remains silent, staring out the window as she absorbs Dorothea's surprisingly thorough knowledge. Dorothea softly chuckles at Nadia's quiet hesitance, patient enough to wait for her complete trust. Outside, the carriage rolls along the paved path as Dorothea expresses her growing appreciation, received with gratitude. Rhythmic, sharp clicking sounds as Dorothea's elegant lace-trimmed shoes confidently pace down the corridor. Walking into the bustling town, Dorothea leads the way with her loyal new companion, Nadia, following close behind. Dorothea explains that she has invited their targets to the upcoming event as they step inside. Looking visibly concerned, Nadia confesses her worries about the potentially hostile atmosphere inside. Dorothea offers a calm, confident smile, gently reassuring her nervous companion not to worry. A flashback reveals suspicious conversations between workers hired to gather critical information. The search for hidden documents continues, highlighting the value of unexpected intelligence found during operations. Nadia blinks in surprise, caught off guard by Dorothea's sharp insights. A sudden hostile shout of "Hey you!" echoes as a rough-looking man blocks their path. The scarred, bald man angrily warns them that this rough establishment is no place for nobles to play. Dorothea quietly tells Nadia that what she is about to witness next will be even more surprising. With supreme confidence, Dorothea adjusts her hat ribbon, expecting their loud opponent to behave himself. Nadia gasps in utter confusion and worry, wondering what her mistress is planning to do. A sudden sharp whoosh cuts through the air as Dorothea swiftly swings her ribbon like a weapon. Amidst the dramatic flurry, Dorothea brandishes her long lace ribbon with dangerous grace and absolute focus. Ballman mockingly yells, completely unaware of the lethal skill behind her graceful weapon. A sudden tight snap echoes as the lace ribbon wraps securely around the man's wrist, trapping him. Dorothea pulls back with incredible force, using her weapon to completely off-balance her opponent. Heavy crashing clatter sounds as chairs go flying from the sheer force of her strike. The arrogant man is left lying completely unconscious face down on the wooden floor after a single blow. Nadia stands in stunned, wide-eyed silence, completely astounded by Dorothea's effortless combat prowess. Smiling amidst the roses, Dorothea casually looks forward to seeing how the rest of the venue greets them. A small, dark-haired girl quietly enjoys a sweet treat during a brief pause in the action. A flashback begins as a voice urgently calls out for Miss Charlotte inside the sunlit estate corridors. A quick, sudden dash sounds as a younger Nadia turns to respond politely to her mistress Charlotte. Clutching a heavy pouch, the young Nadia asks Charlotte why she is giving her so much money. Charlotte explains with gentle warmth that she noticed Nadia had seemed down and wanted to help. When Nadia protests that she has done nothing to deserve it, Charlotte kindly tells her to accept it as a bonus. Still hesitant, Nadia looks at her beloved mistress with deep gratitude and concern. Charlotte smiles warmly, insisting that Nadia take the money because she truly deserves it. A dark, blood-splattered image of a dagger amidst red roses symbolizes the tragic downfall that followed. The narration reveals the grim day Charlotte was tragically sent away to prison. A sudden, painful cry of "Arg!" echoes through the quiet nursery as tragedy strikes the household. Back in the present, Nadia looks solemn as she remembers the tragic loss of her former mistress. A dull flop and thud sounds as more of the establishment's guards fall unconscious onto the floor. Dorothea lets out a soft, relieved sigh of "whew" after easily sweeping the area clear of hostiles. Smiling playfully, Dorothea asks if their opposition is already completely defeated. An authoritative woman commands them to follow her, putting an end to the fighting. Dorothea instructs Nadia to stay close by her side as they proceed deeper into the facility. Nodding politely, Nadia wonders why Dorothea reminds her so much of Charlotte despite looking completely different. Dorothea walks ahead, her imposing posture radiating the same protective warmth that Nadia once knew. They approach a grand spiral staircase as the name of Madame Murda is announced. A servant informs the master of the house that their guest has finally arrived. The narration outlines the various ways secrets are gathered, noting that the most valuable clues come from unlikely places. Sitting comfortably, the elderly woman quietly instructs her servant to let the guests inside. Dorothea and Nadia stand before the powerful woman who quietly controls the capital's largest underground intelligence network. Dorothea politely compliments the elderly leader, noting her impressive enduring presence. Madame Murda continues her knitting with a warm, grandfatherly smile as she welcomes them. A sudden drop sounds as Madame Myrta freezes in surprise, asking Dorothea how she knows her. Stepping forward in her lace-trimmed gown, Dorothea calmly agrees to the proposed terms. Smiling confidently, Dorothea points out how difficult it is for outsiders to bypass Madame Myrta's personal security team. Madame Myrta acknowledges that those who cannot get past her guards will find it impossible to buy information. The elderly leader of the intelligence network realizes Dorothea is far more clever than a mere plaything. Observing Madame Myrta's knowing smile, Dorothea internally notes that the elderly woman has already investigated her background. Madame Myrta warmly invites her young guest to name her request, promising she will sell any information for the right price. A soft slip sounds as Dorothea's gloved hand smoothly slides a note over, instructing Madame Myrta to send all bills directly to her. Accepting the paper, Madame Myrta listens intently as Dorothea begins outlining the specific intelligence she requires. With absolute focus, Dorothea declares that she needs to discover everything about the powerful Four Greats. She demands every single detail, no matter how trivial, leaving no stone unturned in her quest for knowledge. Dorothea leaves no room for error, firmly demanding that absolutely nothing be left out of the final report. The scene shifts to a serene, sun-drenched estate garden where a beautifully decorated swing sways in the quiet breeze. Inside the peaceful estate, a voice calls out to inquire about the current whereabouts of Miss Chuchu. A maid politely informs Miss Angela that the lady of the house has stepped outside for a moment. Stepping down the corridor, Angela's boot suddenly halts as a sharp pause sounds. Turning around slightly, she casually reminds the maid to address her as Miss Angela rather than Doctor. Golden sunlight filters through a lush garden archway covered entirely in vibrant red climbing roses. Next to a clear garden pond, a cluster of bright yellow daffodils blooms under the warm sun. Standing amidst the foliage, Rosalind gently asks the blonde-haired woman what she plans to plant in the garden next. Soft pluck sounds as a delicate white-gloved hand gently harvests one of the yellow daffodils. Looking stunning in her butterfly-themed blue gown, Charlotte muses about discussing her next garden choice with Angela. A quiet reflection reveals that Angela was the one who taught her about the dangerous toxicity of daffodils. Realizing the gravity of the occasion, Charlotte notes that the day of the Imperial Ball has finally arrived. With a gentle nod of agreement, Rosalind silently confirms his readiness for the high-stakes evening ahead. A dark determination settles over Charlotte as she prepares to confront her bitter political enemies at the Imperial Gala. As they begin to walk, Ruslan suddenly pauses his step and asks her to wait for a moment. Turning to face her, Ruslan politely requests to take a closer look at her beautiful purple earring. Startled by his sudden proximity, Charlotte blinks in confusion, wondering why he is suddenly focusing on her jewelry. A sudden tug sounds as Ruslan's gloved hand grasps the elaborate purple jewel hanging from her ear. A sudden whoosh cuts through the air as a swift magical energy activates between them. Charlotte lets out a sharp ouch as she flinches from the sudden pinch of the magical manipulation. Moving with swift coordination, Ruslan firmly holds her wrist to keep her steady and close. He carefully adjusts the purple gemstone, ensuring his magic is perfectly anchored onto her earring. A bright flash of magical light briefly illuminates the space between them as the spell activates. Clinging to her in a close embrace, Ruslan holds her steady as the powerful aura settles over them. Pulling back slightly, a bewildered Charlotte touches her ear and asks him what that sudden action was for. Smiling with quiet amusement, Ruslan gently tells her to wait and observe the magical effects. Charlotte gasps in surprise, realizing his voice is echoing in her mind even though his lips did not move. Ruslan explains that she can speak back to him simply by channeling a small amount of aura into her voice. He gazes at her with deep trust, reassuring her that this secret magic will keep them connected. Charlotte is left completely speechless, deeply impressed by the incredible utility of his hidden magical abilities. As they stand in their close embrace, Charlotte silently wonders if she should finally let go of him. Overwhelmed by the intense closeness and sudden magical link, Charlotte freezes in utter confusion and embarrassment. Angela suddenly bursts into the garden, squealing in shock and quickly offering to give them some privacy. Utterly embarrassed, Charlotte quickly shouts out to Ruslan in a desperate attempt to defuse the awkward misunderstanding. Amused by the reaction, Ruslan calmly points out that their close friends must believe their romantic ruse as well. Charlotte's desperate shout echoes into the sunny sky as she tries to call a fleeing Angela back. The scene shifts to the Imperial Palace, where a massive glowing golden chandelier hangs from the ornate ceiling. Elegant nobles dressed in lavish formal attire mingle and chat under the brilliant lights of the bustling ballroom. Watching the crowd, a handsome white-haired man with pointed ears sneers about the rising influence of a young count. The white-haired count stands proudly, his lavish white and blue military-style uniform radiating an air of untouchable authority. A sudden, silent glance cuts sideways as the white-haired man watches the social climbing of his peers. The glasses-wearing noble explains the emperor's calculated display of generosity to his companion. He admits the grand display seems excessive as they converse under the ballroom's golden lights. The orange-haired woman brightly inquires about Oscar's current location at the busy gathering. With a sudden jerk of his head, the white-haired man points toward the bustling crowd. He notes that Oscar is currently busy networking and chatting with the other influential men. Orange-haired woman gossips about the scandalous commoner background of Count Keitel's companion. The glasses-wearing noble falls silent, contemplating the rumors with a grave expression. A sudden snatch sounds as he aggressively grabs her arm to pull her away. Harsh glare cuts through the space as the noble warns his companion to choose her words carefully. Startled by his sudden intensity, the orange-haired woman tries to steer the conversation back to business. The narrative shifts to the grim history of Hilarian's massive human trafficking operation. The dark recollection reveals that even the secretive forest dwellers were targeted and sold into slavery. The glasses-wearing noble confrontingly brings up this dark past to the white-haired elf.
He pointedly reminds the elf that he shares the exact same blood as those enslaved victims. A sharp swish sounds as the white-haired man turns in silent building fury. In a cold, menacing tone, the elf demands never to be compared to those he deems pathetic weaklings. An oppressive, suffocating tension settles between the two men as they stand deadlocked. Unfazed, the glasses-wearing noble coldly points out that high society views him no differently than the rest. He reflects on his past plans to exploit Hilarian's illegal business as a personal slush fund. The recollection highlights how easily he was willing to overlook horrific crimes for financial gain. A disappointed sounds in the present as he laments his former partner's foolish demise.